Hare Krishna. Welcome to Tax YouTube channel. This is CRO Pingle, practicing chartered accountant based in Mumbai, also partner in Motilal and Associates LLP, member firm of Marks Network. Welcome to the video series on Income Tax Act 2025, and today is session 2. So let's directly dive into it. Let me allow to share my screen. Yes. So, in the previous episode, we understood the concept, purpose, and constitutional basis of taxation of India. Before studying the provisions of the Income Tax Act itself, it is important to understand how India's tax system evolved over the centuries. Means you will enjoy this session after getting the information on various Income Tax Act. So taxation is not a modern concept. From the kingdom of ancient India to the digital tax administration of today, tax laws have continuously evolved to meet the economic, political, and social needs of the nation. So in this episode, we shall trace the journey of the direct taxation from the ancient India through the British era, post-independence reforms, and the Income Tax Act 1961, and then the modernization efforts culminating the Income Tax Act 2025 framework. So this historical perspective will help us what to appreciate why many provisions exist in their current form and how tax policy has evolved over the time. So understanding the history of taxation helps us understand why tax laws were enacted, how tax administration evolved, then reasons for reforms and policy objectives behind the various provisions. So tax laws are not created in isolation. They reflect what economic realities of their time. So let's start with it. Understand why study tax history. So a tax professional should not merely know sections and provisions. Historical understanding helps in what? Interpreting the legislative intent, understanding the rationale behind the reforms, appreciating the changes in compliance requirements, and anticipating the future policy directions. So history provides what context to the law is what I feel. Next, let's see taxation in ancient India. The concept of taxation existed in India thousands of years ago. Yes, so ancient rulers collected revenue for what maintain the armies, build the infrastructure, administer justice, and support what public welfare. So taxation was considered a necessary contribution for the governance and security is what is the base of that direct tax. So even ancient texts discuss principles of fair taxation. Moving further, let's understand Kautilya and Arthashastra. One of the earliest comprehensive discussions on taxation appears in the Arthashastra authored by whom? Kautilya, that is Chanakya. Key principles included in that tax should be reasonable, collection should not be oppressive, revenue should support what rate functions, state functions, and economic activity should be encouraged. So, famous analogy compares taxation to a bee collecting honey from the flowers without damaging the flowers. So, this remains what relevant even today also. Moving further, taxation during the Mauryan period. So the Mauryan Empire developed what sophisticated revenue system. Major sources included here agriculture taxes, customs duties, trade levies, meaning mining revenue. So tax administration was organized through designated officers. So many modern tax administration concept can be traced to these early systems. Next. Medieval India and taxation. Let's understand that also. So during the medieval periods, taxation remained what primarily linked to the land ownership. agricultural output, trade activities. So revenue formed the backbone of state administration. So different kingdoms adopted different methods based on their local economic conditions at that time or at that era. Let's understand Mughal revenue administration. So the Mughal Empire significantly what improved the tax administration. Raja Todar Mal introduced systematic land revenue assessment. So features included their measurement of land, classification of agricultural productivity, then standardized assessment methods. So these reforms enhance what certainty and efficiency in what revenue collection. Now coming to the British East India Company era. So after gaining territorial control, the East India Company relied heavily on what? Taxation. So revenue system included in their era permanent settlement, Rayatwari system, and Mallarwari system. So the primary objective was revenue extraction rather than economic development. Means the British was focused on that, collect the revenue and not much improve the economic development. They are not concerned about that much. So this period laid foundations for modern statutory taxation. Moving further, now come to the introduction of income tax in India. That is first year 1860. So here India's first income tax act was introduced in 1860 by whom? James Wilson. The objective was to address the financial difficulties following the revolt of 1857, right? So characteristics were first formal income tax legislation, that is the 1860, temporary in nature, applied to specified income categories. So this marked the birth of income taxation in India. What? 1860. Let's moving further understand developments after 1860. So the 1860 Act underwent several changes. So tax laws were introduced, modified, repealed, reintroduced. So administrative challenges highlighted the need for a more stable legislative framework. And then comes Income Tax Act 1886. So here the Income Tax Act 1886 represented a major advancement over the 1860. So key features were more systematic structure, better classification of income, and improved tax administration. So several concepts developed during this period influenced later legislation. So moving further, next Income Tax Act 1918. So this act attempted what? Modernized taxation. However, complexities remain. So government recognized the need for a more robust and comprehensive framework. So this lead to the next major legislative development, and that is Income Tax Act 1922. So here Income Tax Act 1922 was a landmark in Indian tax history. So major contribution of this act were structured assessment system, organized tax administration, defined powers of authorities, development of judicial interpretations, and many fundamental tax principles emerged during this period. So the act remained in force for nearly 4 decades, that is 40 years, because after that, means we can say let's first see the post independence tax reforms. So here after independence, that is 1947, India adopted planned economic development. Government required what? Greater revenue, of course that were the need of that time, improved administration also, and better compliance system. So several committees examined the taxation reforms and recommended the modernization. And then they also recommend the need for a new income tax act because complexity of 1922 act. So by the late 1950s, the 1922 act had what become difficult to administer. So reasons included therein numerous amendments, complex drafting, growing economy, increased litigation. So a complete legislative overall became what? Necessary. And then comes our Income Tax Act 1961. So this Income Tax Act 1961 replaced what? 1922 Act. Key objectives were at that time simplification, consolidation, better administration, and improved compliance. We can correlate to with our 2025 Act. So for decades, it served as the principal direct tax legislation in India. So most concept studied by the professionals today originated from the 1961 Act. Let's understand major reforms under the 1961 Act. So 1961 Act evolved continuously. Major developments included introduction of PAN, expansion of TDS mechanisms, electronic filing after 2007, centralized processing, faceless assessments now, and risk-based scrutiny system also. So technology transformed the tax administration. Then let's understand economic liberalization and the tax reform. So economic liberalization in 1991 changed the complete India's tax policy significantly. Objectives included encouraging the investment, simplifying the compliance, broadening the tax base, reducing the distortions. So tax reforms became an important component of what our economic policy. Let's see digital era of tax administration. So modern tax administration increasingly relies on what? Technology, and now AI based technology also. So example, online return filing, AIs and information reporting, data analytics, then automated processing, faceless appeals and assessment. So the focus has shifted toward the transparency and efficiency. Now let's understand evolution towards the Income Tax Act 2025. So over the time, repeated amendments, increased complexity. So Income Tax Act 2025 framework seeks to simplify that language, improve the readability, rationalize the structure, and enhance what? Accessibility. So the objective is not merely legal reform, but also improved understanding and compliance and simplicity. So let's see timeline of direct tax evolution. It's for our ready reference that Ensign India, Arthashastra, Mughal reforms, then 1860 Act, 1886, 1918, 1922, 1961, and then 2025 framework. So this timeline highlights what the major milestones from Ensign to the modern Income Tax Act 2025 structure. So the journey reflects what India's evolving economy and governance. So key takeaways from today's this second session, I can say the most important lessons from today's sessions are taxation is deeply rooted in Indian history. It is not that because I for this I have researched it and I also come to know yes otherwise I also till date I was also only know the 1961 Act and then the 2025 Act. I didn't know what earlier systems of yes Arthashastra Kautilya Chanakya is there but the what I said the timeline is like that. So this gives the this needs to be known to us as a professionals also as an Indian we need to know our history. So the most important lessons for today's session, taxation is deeply what rooted in Indian history. Income tax was formally introduced in 1860, then 1922 Act established what modern administration. 1961 Act became the backbone of the what we can say our backbone of the direct taxation. And then recent reforms emphasize what simplification, digitization, and taxpayer convenience. So understanding all this evolution helps us appreciate the structure of today's tax law is what I feel. So in this episode, we trace the fascinating journey of taxation from ancient India kingdoms to the modern Income Tax Act framework till 2025. So we learn how tax system evolved in response to the changing economic conditions, administrative needs, and technological advancement. So in the next episode, that is from the third episode, we will begin our study of the Income Tax Act 2025 itself. Let's stay tuned to the Tax YouTube channel. We shall understand its architecture, structure, layout, major parts, and how the Bear Act is organized. So this episode will serve as a roadmap for our entire legislation and will help you navigate the act efficiently as a professional. So thank you so much for patient hearing. If you have any questions, observations, suggestion, then please let me know via WhatsApp, email, or you can also comment below the video. Hope you are gaining valuable knowledge from all these video updates and video series which we are conducting on a Tax Guru YouTube channel. So thank you so much. Once again, stay tuned to the Tax Guru YouTube channel. If you are not yet subscribed, then please do subscribe for latest updates and video series like this. Thank you so much once again. Bye bye. Take care. See you soon. Hare Krishna.